Before you move to Halifax, Nova Scotia, there are a few things that might genuinely surprise you. Halifax is a brilliant place to live with superb scenery, the ocean never far away, and a slower pace of life that many people really appreciate. But there's also a few realities that people don't often fully understand until they actually get here. The cost of living isn't always what people expect. The weather can change dramatically in just a single day, travel connections could take a bit more planning, and healthcare access can sometimes be a challenge. Now, none of these are actual deal breakers for most people, but they're things worth understanding before you decide to make the move. So, if you're thinking about moving to Halifax, Nova Scotia, here are 7 things people often don't expect when they relocate here. Number 1, Halifax is not as cheap as it used to be. For a long time, Halifax had a reputation as one of the more affordable cities in the whole of Canada. But the reality is that over the past few years, the cost of living here has gone up quite significantly. House prices have increased, groceries are more expensive, utilities have gone up, and everyday costs are higher than many newcomers expect. A lot of people arrive thinking Halifax will still feel like the bargain city it once was, and they're a bit shocked when they start looking at the actual numbers. Another thing worth mentioning is our wages. In many industries, salaries here are lower than in some of the larger provinces, and depending on your profession, the job market can be quite competitive. So it's definitely something worth researching before you make the move here. Number 2, the weather here can change quickly. Halifax sits right on the Atlantic Ocean and is influenced by the Gulf Stream, which helps keep our winters just a little bit milder than many other parts of Canada, but also living on the coast does mean the weather can change very quickly. We're talking wind, fog, rain, and winter storms are all part of our life here. You might wake up to sunshine, but at the end of the day, you might end up with thick, dense fog rolling in off the ocean, and therefore the temperature swings can be quite dramatic. Just the other evening, it was minus 22 when we went to bed, and by lunchtime the following day, we were up to plus 8 degrees. And that sort of shift is not unusual here. So, from a practical point of view, most locals will tell you the same thing. Dress in layers, particularly in spring and fall, because the weather can change rapidly. Mornings can be really chilly, and by the afternoon, it can feel almost warm. And yes, sometimes you really do get all 4 seasons in just the one day. But once you get used to it, that ever-changing climate really does become part of the fun of actually living here. Number 3, Halifax is still a small to mid-sized city. Halifax has great restaurants, culture, universities, and a beautiful waterfront, but it's still very much a small to mid-sized city. If you're moving from somewhere larger, Toronto, Vancouver, you're probably going to notice that difference really quickly. Things move at a slightly slower pace here, and for many people, that's exactly the appeal. Halifax itself has a useful energy thanks to the universities, but some of the surrounding rural communities tend to have an older population and a much quieter lifestyle. Another thing here that people are noticing fairly quickly is that our shopping options are obviously going to be a little bit more limited than in larger cities, but don't worry, we have Costco. For example, grocery shopping tends to revolve around a few major chains. Sobeys, which is actually headquartered here in Nova Scotia, operates the stores like Sobeys, Foodland, and Lawton Drugs. Atlantic Superstore is part of the Loblaw Group, which also includes No Frills and Shoppers Drug Mart. So while there are some different store names, the grocery market here is really dominated by a couple of the large players, and we'll throw in Costco, apart from some of the smaller with independent stores. And unfortunately, sorry, we don't have an Aldi or a Lidl, and it's likely we never will. Choice isn't always as wide as people are used to, and prices can be higher, so a lot of locals keep a really close eye on the weekly flyers and stock up when there are some good deals. It's just part of how you manage grocery costs here. Number 4, the lifestyle is a big part of the appeal. Now, this is where Halifax really does shine. One of the biggest reasons people move here is for the lifestyle. You're never that far from beaches, lakes, hiking trails, or the ocean. And if you ever wanted to live near the coast in Canada, realistically, you've only got 2 choices, East Coast or West Coast. And while the West Coast is absolutely stunning, real estate prices there are on a completely different level. Yes, we know Halifax has become more expensive, but generally speaking, you still get much more home here for your money. A big part of life in Halifax is spending time outdoors. In the summer, people are out everywhere, walking around the city, enjoying the waterfront as it comes alive with the visitors, the cruise ships, people heading to the beaches, kayaking, paddleboarding, and exploring the many hiking trails that are around our region. And it doesn't really stop when winter arrives. People still get outside, except now we're skiing, we're sledding, snowshoeing, skating, or just enjoying a walk in the blue sunshine after a fresh snowfall. And perhaps just as importantly, people here do tend to be friendly. Communities really do matter. Neighbours talk to each other. People say hello when they pass you on a walking trail. And that sense of community is something that many newcomers really appreciate once they've actually settled in. Hitting up number 5, travel can take longer and cost more. Halifax is well connected across Canada, but it's not like a major airline hub like Toronto or Montreal. So many flights are going to connect through those cities such as Toronto, Montreal or Ottawa. And that means travel can take longer than people expect and flights can be more expensive. A lot of the international routes are seasonal. Typically, we're running from like late spring through to the fall. So for people used to living in Europe, where you can hop on a plane for a weekend getaway really easily, Halifax can feel a little bit more remote. Canada is a massive country. Even a flight from Halifax to Toronto, you're taking about 2 hours. Now, travel is possible, of course, but it's just going to require a little bit more planning and occasionally a slightly bigger budget. Number 6, our EV infrastructure is still developing. Another practical consideration, particularly if you're one of those people driving an electric vehicle, is the charging infrastructure. Halifax does have EV charging stations and the number is starting to increase as more people switch over to electric cars. You'll find the chargers around the city in places such as the public parking areas, shopping centres such as IKEA, and locations like the Halifax Infirmary and libraries, as well as some others along the main highways. If most of your driving is in Halifax or around the HRM, you're going to be absolutely fine. But if you are planning longer trips outside of the city, especially into more rural parts of Nova Scotia or across the Atlantic provinces, it's worth doing a little bit of research ahead of time and figuring out where you're going to be able to charge. A helpful tool many EV owners use is PlugShare, which shows where charging stations are located and even highlights some of the free charging spots that are around the city. This network is improving every year, but comparing ourselves to the bigger cities, our infrastructure is still developing. Finally, coming through to number 7, healthcare. It is still a challenge. Healthcare access is something newcomers should understand completely before moving to Nova Scotia. Canada has a publicly funded healthcare system which is superb when it's working well. You won't receive a bill for most doctor or hospital visits, and that is something that many people really do value. However, access to care can sometimes be a big challenge. Finding a family doctor can take time, and many newcomers rely on the walk-in clinics, urgent care centres or virtual care centres whilst they're waiting to be attached to an actual physician. Another thing people often don't expect is that wait times for non-emergency care can be quite long. If you need to see a specialist, have certain tests done, or require elective procedures, the waiting list can sometimes stretch for months. Emergency care is always available, of course, but for routine or ongoing healthcare, it can require a bit of patience. If you've got chronic healthcare conditions or ongoing medical needs, I'd strongly suggest doing a bit of research before committing to a move, just so you really do understand how our system works and what to expect. The province is actively working to improve the access and reduce the wait times, but it's still something that many newcomers find to be a little bit of an adjustment. So, despite some of these realities, Halifax continues to attract people from across Canada and around the world. For many people, the lifestyle, the ocean, scenery, and a strong sense of that community make it a fantastic place to live. If you are one of those people and you're thinking about moving to Nova Scotia, I share insights about the neighbourhoods, housing costs, and what daily life here is really like. And if you're considering making the move and you want some local advice, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to point people in the right direction. If you found this video helpful, you might also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel under that playlist about living in Halifax and of course the Halifax real estate market.